Good evening. When I was in high school, one of my teachers gave a class survey in which they asked the following: Are you more likely to believe someone who has never changed their mind, or someone who has changed their mind several times? I found the question preposterous and couldn't even comprehend it. I thought it was some sort of trick, but couldn't detect what it may have been in that moment. Obviously, I thought, the answer is someone who has changed their mind several times. Nearly 90% of the class said, someone who has never changed their mind. I was stupefied. What I've learned since then is that a key reason for this belief is that it's deeply maladaptive and not uncommonly outright dangerous to admit fault, to consider new ideas, and to give credence to others. To do so, at least without something cunning to follow it up with, is to walk across no man's land with some notion of universal goodwill, holding a lamb instead of a gun. The enemy and those now behind you would be more likely to compete to see who can take you out first for the meal in your arms than consider whatever you were saying, regardless of what it was based in. This world is one of intense selection pressures and vicious conflict, and times of calm are rare, easily lost, and won at the expense of steamrolling another group. The concept of the Golden Age is one that frequently occurs after a time of immense struggle, with one side having been spent as the payment for a brief period of gilded wonder, and every pax imperia we've ever seen was achieved after others were vanquished and only a few, often one, power blocks remained, incorporating all else with negligible resistance. We humans see ourselves behaving very similarly to imperial might on smaller and more individual levels. Human existence itself seems to depend on being trapped in a bubble, and in the warped perspectives of both what's within and outside of that bubble. Whatever cannot be warped, or is too far to be seen at all, is simply denied as existing at all. To see beyond it, through cracks or deliberate action, is to see more than what exists within the dome, and to terrify and bring to arms those who wish to remain ignorant. The fervent natalism ingrained into us works very similarly. Simultaneously, we have phrases like, "It's the little things that count," and "Don't sweat the small stuff." One will tell you to count your blessings, and also to not overthink things. People espouse many polar opposite contradictions without ever noticing how their brain must completely change in tone depending on what they personally want to see done. The same creature that behaves this way has also, somehow, conceived of terms such as hypocrite without any hesitation. To be outside of this design, or to even simply have your own internal design that permits you to exist in this world, is often to be chalked up to merely being some socially deemed unpleasant thing, from insane and mentally ill to being desperate for attention, or to the very least unequivocally incorrect. The human brain is designed in such a way where it perfectly places itself at the center of all things. Not always perfect, but more perfect than you. The obvious problem to all things due to some simple defect others should just ignore so it goes away, or the existence of that one guy we should all hate because my brain screams at me to see him lessened or destroyed. Life is intensely and passionately based in itself, firstly, to the self, and secondly, to one's immediate surroundings. This is what the infamous subversion and propaganda are based in, as changing the immediate environment of a person changes them as well, save for those few who are strongly rooted in one thing or another. Although given enough time, even these men will eventually be weeded out, one by one, until only the most resilient are left clinging to life. Humans have evolved to be generalists for this and related reasons, having been selected this way due to specialists often not lasting long after their time has come to an end. Most people will change drastically without even noticing it, frequently hating who and what they used to be, without any care for who that person was and how the one they currently are came to be. This process used to be seen taking place over decades, but has more recently been seen over the course of just years and even months. While I find myself able to look back at my own life and realize who I was in the past and in what ways I changed, sometimes radically, and for what reasons I likely did so, most seem to have this continual stretch of time associated with their lives in which they're basically the same person they were at the age of 3, despite now being 63. Attire and trends may have changed, they think, but not much, and they themselves obviously never did in any real way. I once concluded that, for all iterations of life to be possible, the outer parameters and design of this existence must be fluid and open-ended in order to permit each of them. Anything that exists in any form, no matter how strange, no matter if it must be filtered through a dozen layers before accomplishing its intentions, must therefore be as real as anything else. A boulder forged by the elements, and one carefully and meticulously chiseled with a laser from space, would therefore be equally natural from the point of view of the fabric of all things, as they are both products of it. Reality appears to be the product of literal existence, and on this planet, might truly is right. If one can merely vanquish a form of existence, then one has showcased how fragile and unfavored it is by this realm, and particularly to the species. Contrary to what many believe, this does not show it to be inferior. Quite the contrary. The fact that it would be easier to smear mud on a canvas, or to go to the effort of mixing various paints together at random, does not therefore mean this is of high value or worth. The immense fortitude and diligence required to permit something not so easily achieved has a value of its own, allowing for vantage points inconceivable by anything lower. 2. Tower straight up is not so easy though. In addition to thwarting off merciless selection pressures, to find a way to an advantageous angle is quite unlikely. It would surely take just as long to count all of the ways one can fail in this than to finally succeed in it, each failure, no matter how numerous, merely being a collection of ingredients and circumstances that, in that particular moment, did not produce anything greater. This also assumes that you, specifically, are capable of it, and that you are not merely a foundational link in a long chain, alive or to be. This existence is grueling, and it is unforgiving of those who seek something beyond, to, on their own accord, permit something other than one of the many forms of base and unquestioned modes of being. Those of us who do question and adjust ourselves to the best of our abilities aren't entirely different from those who claim to distrust that which morphs. I find myself to eternally comprehend what lies outside of myself, disturbed by those whom eternally comprehend the current way in which they feel they must be in order to be at all, ultimately changing more and vastly more than those that openly admit to doing so.